Okay, so basically today our kind of short session is focus on Guru Yoga. I found this is like this text maybe helpful a lot of people because like more like a ritual, and it's Guru Yoga same as when you're talking about sadhana or just like many different meditation texts. So basically saying like this Guru Yoga cities can read Kedang, Trubi, Lobi, Chembo, Sengi, Sangbu, Lami, Nenjur, Shukso. So that's like a Guru Yoga of the great learned and accomplished Acharya, Herbantra, or Sengsampo. So, and actually we can see that this is, I found this is important because when I'm talking about Guru Yoga or meditation text, first like from within emptiness, it came out throne and lotus and mudras. And then on top of that, the word described the Deity or Lama's kind of color. And there's like a different mudra. And if they have a 2 hand or 4 hand, 8 hand, each hand holding different Dharma object, religion item. And also like each hand have a different mudra and wearing different color. And also like a sitting posture, this kind of more described. And so before we go to the translate, I think like I little bit like a reading is maybe read differently because like I noticed that English and Tibetan we have a huge difference. English they have a comma, semicolon, punctuation, comma, full stop, this sort of thing, so clear, wonderful to understanding. Tibetan we have only to take and share. Take means dot between syllables in Tibetan scripture. Shake means division stroke in Tibetan scripture. Pretty much that's it. So that's why like number one, people reading is they find so difficult, which goes together. And then even different together got a different meaning. And also like English, they have a full stop. If you got a full stop, you don't have to go after first, they give all kind of independent clause, give meaning. Tibetan, sometimes we don't know where's the full stop. You have to go further. That's some, it's like a Tibetan, some of the second language, they find it very difficult. So that's sometimes, I think, featured in one class, I featured on making the how to read differently cutting. So maybe that's kind of helpful. So anyway, this I'm reading differently. As basically saying almost all ritual texts and talking in Tibetan is Ano Yindu Kungi Chos. Is the spring of all alphabet. So that's like thing. So basically saying we can say, use this pen. Chu Gun Jimmy Dongbe Nang. Two, then just one. Eru Rai Chibe Dar. So that's the thing, little bit thing. So Lopen Chembo Sengi, they have two Sengi. Sengi is like it's not really Tibetan, it's Sanskrit. Sanskrit Sinha, which is like a lion. So that's in order to show in this Sanskrit, we're writing differently. This thing, Sang. Karma Dangde Siji Bara. Benji, so there's a Pandi, also Sanskrit, right? It's like there's somebody know 5 fields of knowledge. Pandi, Tai, Chaje, Jen, Ula, Tenu, Sumshu, Sul, Chakye, Chuche, Yu Nyam Shak, Lepam, Namshi, Chikil, Shu. Tukar, Shirub, Paril, Chin, Simdo, Sheji, Chashi, Ma, Zachak, Chuche, Nyamsha, Dang, Wome, Gyabjin, Doje, Dang, Lepam, Zinji, Lungu, Che, Pendar, Doji, Kidung Shuk, Nesum Yiki Drusum Dang, Tukar Kimi Ai Chen Dele Weti Yishi Pa Jianda Damye Yerme Guru. This kind of short form. This is like this composed by the Kizichek Lodi, and I find from the lots of the like a tech website. So this here also like sometimes I'm saying sometimes the cutting is very important, and because things the Tibetan alphabet we can just like two words together make a verb. Like this is an example. Chanda. Chanda means a signature, right? But just often we like switch it. Daksen. Daksen means sign. So that's like a really just there's a thing. If somebody they call something Chanda coming, but just lob chen dagri. That means it's lob and chen dagri together. But something lob separate, Chanda, then you got a completely different meaning. We were cutting important, right? So that's why it's sometimes it's future to maybe example. This together one thing with like a lob chen dagri.
Right. It's very difficult to know where to cut the words.
Yeah.
Especially for beginners or intermediate readers, very hard to know like what actually constitutes a word because there's no spaces between the words.
Yeah. So that's the thing. There's like, and if you look really careful in Tibetan, we don't have that many vocabulary compared to like English thing, because in Tibetan we make just like whatever, just like for some 10, we make 10 add many different and then make thing lob chen, zhong chen, lung chen, and just like 10 add many different things make a verb, and also dark and 10 dark chen, right? And just like dark add different thing make another verb. So that's why English find difficult. I'm not sure. I heard that like Dr. Thupten Chimba, he make one grammar text. Grammar text, he also little focus on how to cut those things. So, I mean, just like if people want to read, maybe if you have this text, we should look at this thing. It's really useful. So, yeah. One time, it's like Thupten Chimba also mentioned that Tibetan grammar is good. It's useful if you spend years for studying. Right, like we do in monastery, like morning studying with teacher 2 hours, come home making like I don't know sentence like 3-4 hours. So if you spend that many hours, maybe figure out. Otherwise, like in Tibetan school in special West, spend only 1 or 2 hours something, and that's very difficult. So that's why we have to use different methods. So and also like
do Tibetans also have a hard time knowing how to break the sentence sometimes, how to break the words for children or young people?
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody speaks Tibetan language fluently in a common sense, and they can cut this from their knowledge, right? If number one, this is like not common education, and then just like very difficult. I read some Tibetan student go study in India, like a government school, even to finish grade 12. When reading some philosophical texts, they read so many like folks saying like Chu Kun is a Chu Kunji Metong Pangang. So that doesn't make sense at all. We're cutting, right? So this kind of cutting, I noticed that. So that's why in Tibetan we have a job. So that's the thing. Sometimes say Pandyan Sakya Pala Namo. That means I prostration to the Sakyapa. Reality, Pandyan Sa Kyapala Namo. Kyapa means talking more like a poop. I prostrate to the poop. Right? This kind of people reading, it just in like some like one people read newspaper, Eritang, Iraq, Mark, Mija, Tapchiche, basically US and Iraq, they decide they want to fight anymore. And just Eritang, Iraq, Mark, Mija said, Mungmi, yeah, Tapchiche, the US and Iraq, 100 army decide. What is time? I mean, just doesn't make sense anything, right? Mungmi. So it means like usually something mark and the negative mija. And other people said mungmi. Yeah, mija. This kind of thing, it's like a really the cutting is very important. I think it's like yeah. Even Tibetan
you can get a lot of jokes out of that.
Yeah. It just I'm sure there was so many jokes. Yeah. So here also I choose this one as a ritual text. Other thing, I noticed that one translate the verses. I think it's two things. One thing is like you have to familiar this kind of subject. And other thing, even though here it doesn't make sense, when it makes sense in other language, we have to add something. Because this kind of ritual text makes sense if somebody, just like within this culture or this tradition or something like only know the little bit language, you don't know this kind of culture background. It's something doesn't make sense. Maybe we can, that's why I thought maybe rituals make sense here. See?
Yeah, so there's so much missing. There's so much implied knowledge, implied information. It's kind of like many of us are familiar with like recipes, like for cooking. Kind of similar because there's a lot of stuff that you just have to know based on how you know to cook. And it's not really explained in the recipe.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And this also like other thing, this also not 100% strictly follow the grammar or even the follow the grammar. Lots of the grammar, it's like the point is like a case kind of hiding, right? So that's a little bit difficult. So Chugun, Jimmy, Dombe, Ngang. Really here, like, you put like layer from, right? From, so like out of. It's basically saying out of, we see they don't have a layer. They don't have wherever it makes sense as out of the state of the emptiness, the unborn nature of all phenomena. So that's why we have the layer out of, you have to add it. Otherwise, like it doesn't make sense, right? Agarui, Tibetan Dara. Agarui is like, so Dara means here kind of Ra, upon throne of the Aluwood, lotus, and lunatus. Agarui, Be. The really say Be is Bema, lotus, they're just short form, right? That's in Dawa. So basically saying it's like so from the state of emptiness kind of appearing the kind of like this throne. On the top of throne, there's lotus and lunatus. Now we have a kind of seat, right? Now something appeared. So appear, we didn't have here single sample kind of Jun. We have to put here something like, otherwise they don't have one, right? On this, because the right grammar on this appear the great Acharya Harbandra, Robin Chimpa single sample Jun. So like also we have to add something, otherwise it doesn't make sense.
Right. So this is like you were saying at the beginning, it's kind of just, if you know that this is what this kind of text is likely to say, then you can easily fill in what's missing. But you have to already know that this is the kind of description that should come at this part of the text.
Yeah, exactly. So this, good news is like this almost all texts, ritual texts using the same style. So you figure one thing that you have a pretty good idea. So it's like, and also sometimes this is verses, sometimes it's not verses that kind of longer, you can see, that's also a little bit clear. And now we have on the throne and has a lotus flower, on top of that mundus, on top of that appear the great Acharya Sengasambo. Now we have a kind of subject. Now from here, describe him. So Kamar Dangde Sijimbar. Kamar Dangde is talking of his color, right? And white with the things of red and radiant with majesty and splendor. So kind of saying he's like a body color. And now his gesture, Penditai Chajechen. Chajechen means like, so he wear the costume. So basically saying Chajechen is so really process he can blow or process the costume of Pendita, more talking about. But he said he wearing the costume of Pendita. He's wearing the Pendita clothes, right? So Pendita clothes, see, Ula, Dini, Sumshu, Sul. Ula on his head, so a head of the three Pitaka. So this you can see, I put here example. 1, 2, 3. This is a Pendita head. Kind of, they call three Pitaka head, whatever something. So kind of showing this person know the three subject, three basket. So that's what Pendita head, right? Duwa, Dodi, Ngumba, like Dhamma, Vinaya, this sutra, this kind of thing.
Right.
Yes. The next one. And Chagye Chuche Yu Nyamsha. So Chagye Chuche Yun Nyamsha. Sometimes also reading little bit thing, even here. Chagye means, so here, English his. We didn't have it here, just can apply, right? His right hand in the gesture of Dharma teaching, or mudra of Dharma teaching. And his left is occupies, or I don't like a gesture of meditation, right? So basically, chak ye, cheje ki, chakya tang, chak yun, nyamsha ki chakya. Very longer one, right hand, it's the same as English, Tibetan chak ye, cheje ki, chakya tang, chak yun, nyamsha ki chakya. And lepam namsing, jitung shu. Lepam nam is hold, he hold the volume of text, lepam, and sit with leg half cross, chi, jitung shu. This can more lepam namsing, this thing. And tukar shiru paraji, at his heart is Panchaparama text. Basically saying heart holding the kind of Panchaparama the text. So this like a basically saying is one way is two hand. Maybe more hand described differently. Say sendo sheji chashima. Sendo means gold in color or golden color. Sheji means with one face, chakshima and four hands. So that's like before just like talking about one, now more described about four hands. So this is like a very common when talking about deity. Sometimes deity has their four faces of like four hands. So then just like each hand holding different religion item, and each hand have a different kind of like mudra or gesture. So here's it. Tsacha, Cheche, Nyamshatang. And also other find Tibetan language, people find very difficult. So Tibetan language not clear, singular and plural. It's like a Sanskrit and English is quite clear. So like in Tibetan language, Gombala Tabayu, there's monk in monastery. One monk or two more than one monk, no idea. If it's singular, Gombala Tabachigyu, there are monk in monastery. And plural, Gombala Taba Mampuyu, then plural. Others, Gombala Tabayu, they're not clear. Same thing, Tsacha kind of thing, main hand or root hand. So here you can say pair is like you have to kind of like assume this is like two hand. Tsawecha, Cheche, Nyamsha. And from his like the main pair in his gesture of this like gesture of Dharma teaching is Checheva. This is like here you can see this is Dharma teaching. So it's like we can see one of like looking this thing 5 Buddha family. So it's like so Buddha Varachana in Tibetan they call Nambananze. He's like a teaching mudra. It's like a gesture of Dharma teaching or teaching mudra. And Nyamsha means occupies or just like a meditation gesture, which is like so it's Buddha Amitabha. So he's just like a meditation. This is the maybe let's see here. This one meditation. This thing. And then woman means lower pair. Of course, we have a 4 hand from this our clue. So must be they have a 2 hand, must they have a 2 hand, right? Low, Gyabjin. Gyabjin means like the lower pair and grading the refuge. So this one. Gyabjin, which is like talking about Amoka city. So which is like giving the kind of like granting refuge. And Vajra, the holding Vajra. So, but holding, we have to add. They don't have anything. Doji, there's been assumed Doji is his holding hand, right? Otherwise, so there's sometimes your like a background knowledge, sometimes common sense we have to add in order to make sense. Although like hand Vajra, Vajra is holding in his hand. Yeah, I think that's something we have to add something.
Right.
Yes. Maybe one more line. So this is our last line. Libam teaching and so here, holding a volume of text, he wearing the Sambhogakaya dress, lungi che. Che means like a longus longisobico, also short form, longu, right? Levam jinji, and this is like and lungi che. So pendar doji jidunshu. Pendar, also like a pendar, and it sit in the Vajra posture. This is a Gilrung, doji Gilrung, on the lotus and lunar disc. So the basically saying, Doji Jidung is like you can see back all those old Buddha sitting in this Vraja posture, way of sitting. And then so basically saying Vraja posture on this like a lotus and lunar disc. Here also Panta is short, Pema and Dawa short form, right? And Neso Yiguntu from the three center mark with the three syllables, which is it's like basically saying body, speech, mind, or his forehead and the throne and chakra. So basically saying Om, Ah, Hum, three letter Yiguntu dance. And Tugar Kimi Ayisen and Ah at the heart signifying the unborn. This is like a Tugar. Kimi, Ai, Sen is more signifying. See, Sen sometimes like sign, is like signifying, right? And now we have a letter A. Dele means from that. Let reading out invert the wisdom being. So here also, wisdom is like here, Jianzhang. Sometimes we have borrowed it from here. So that's the thing. When a verse is translated, sometimes from this line bring something to down. Sometimes this line brings something. You have to little bit switch in other language.
Right. Yeah. Because the verb, sometimes a verb or some part of it exists on a different line. So you have to mix up the lines a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, like it doesn't make sense, right? Let reading out invert the wisdom being. So dele means from this letter A. Ale, way to kind of like light reading out, and Yishiba Jianzhang. So basically saying invert the wisdom beings, and then Dami Damsiba Yishiba, which is like they say, who inspired with like visualizing form. So Damsiba, Yishiba, and Yemijur inseparable. So I mean that's kind of thing is like a regional text, and I found like a student translate the verses they find more difficult because like there's something heading and you have to add more makes sense, right? But just important in the first year, we have to read correctly. Maybe another lesson we have to maybe many different ways of reading different verses. If you read correctly and make sense, meaning. I noticed that sometimes English, my whatever second, third language, when I read doesn't make sense. Some native speaker, even the way of reading, tone of voice, it really clearly makes sense. So that's also important in order to understand the meaning is how the reading is important.
Yeah, that means a good way to learn a text, especially verse, is to have somebody, a native speaker, recite it to you, and then you can follow that, follow the recitation even before you understand the meaning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To understand the meaning. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. That's so interesting and so helpful.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
So I know verse is so difficult because it's missing so much grammar, but these are some good tips. So first of all, to know the content, like if you know the style, then you can sort of anticipate what is likely to be the meaning.
Yes.
And then also to be able to read properly so that you're cutting as well as you can.
Yeah, this is 8 verses very common. We have some 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until 16 and 24. We have this long. So maybe sometimes I feel like maybe it's like one thing, just like reading how to read, maybe just helpful people reading.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah.
And also, I don't know, sometimes I feel like when somebody is teaching the Tibetan language for someone, I think first thing like we have to make a gap, like English. It's really important. And just maybe teach for until 1 or 2 years, teach to read this one. Then after that, all join together. Then more makes sense.
Oh, make spaces between the words, you mean?
Yeah, this thing is really important. I'm not noticing.
Yeah. Or like we've done, sometimes you make the verb in a color and the nouns in different colors so people can more easily see the words.
That's also helpful, right? Or just make a GIF. Just, I mean, two things really helpful because like, I don't know, sometimes the Tibetan grammar, just we have to a little bit changing. There's not, same thing is I noticed like English text reading maybe like a few centuries ago, like a different thing. Then everything developed, right? Add something. It's to make more easy to understand, more clear, right? I think sometimes just Tibetan language, we need this.
Yeah, right. You start with something more basic.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, yeah.